Hujambo, beautiful people. You are tuned in to Espresso Talk Today, the podcast that keeps it real about Black empowerment and Black liberation. I'm your host, Amma Robin, and today we are diving deep into a topic that combines Black empowerment, Black liberation, and Black culture. That topic is Kwanzaa. The celebration of Kwanzaa, and yes, it embodies empowerment, liberation, culture, as well as community, spirituality, joy, and a whole lot more. Is today's topic, and we are so happy you're here with us today. So, Akwaba, my brothers, sisters, and gender-neutral individuals, to the Espresso Talk Today show. But before we dive in, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And if you're feeling the show, share it with your fam, your crew, your circle, everyone in your community. Now, grab that espresso, but leave that door open. Everyone is welcome to learn about Kwanzaa. And yes, we are still going to get deep and real. Let's get started. We are so honored to have Master Storyteller Mama Edie to introduce you to this wonderful celebration. Now, Mama Edie is going to explain when Kwanzaa was founded, who founded it, why it was started, and why it's such a wonderful and important celebration. But don't worry, this won't be a dry and boring lecture. Mama Edie will share this information in the lively and engaging way that she shares her wonderful stories. She'll also discuss how you can incorporate the Kwanzaa principles into your daily life, and she's going to share an amazing story at the end of the podcast show. We hope that you will join the Espresso Talk Today team to celebrate Kwanzaa, beginning on December 26th. You know, it's a 7-day celebration. Please remember that the Espresso Talk Today podcast show is not just a show. It's a community. Spoiler alert, unity is the first and foundational principle of Kwanzaa, so no one goes it alone here. You can always reach out to us at team@espressotalktoday.com or on our Facebook page at the Espresso Talk Today podcast page. I'm not going to spend any more time introducing the show. Hans is not here to introduce the show today, but you're definitely going to see rather hear him during the Kwanzaa celebration. Today, we welcome Mama Edie to join me and Mel for this grand introduction and uncommon conversation about Kwanzaa. Let's listen in. Hey, Mel.
Hi, Robin. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks. You see, I'm having an espresso with a dear friend, someone you know already.
I know her very well.
Yeah.
And I am so happy that I joined you at this moment.
Yeah, Mama Edie, how are you today?
I am excellent, especially now that I can be back with you two sisters again. It's just a wonderful thing.
It sure is. I was so excited when I knew we were all going to meet together again.
Ashe. And here in Chicago, it's much earlier, of course, in the day than it is there. But you all are helping me to get my day really rolling in a very nice way. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So, well, a lot coming up this year, this time of year, so many holidays, and yet I just have thoughts of Kwanzaa.
Sure.
And I know, Mel, you were mentioning that Kwanzaa is being celebrated by a lot more people now, right?
Yeah, I read it's being celebrated by 18 million people worldwide. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
That is amazing.
Mm-hmm. That sure is. And I mean, I know that I've taken some steps. Listeners will know from last year, I've taken a few steps into Kwanzaa and I really, really enjoyed it. I like to get in more deeply, but I got to take small steps into things. But Mama Edie has said that she will tell us more about Kwanzaa and explain more about it and how we can celebrate it and live it kind of every day. So I'm just going to ask you a really basic question here, Mama Edie, and I hope this isn't below your knowledge. So just be patient with me. What is Kwanzaa? What is the celebration of Kwanzaa, and what's it about?
Well, I think it's an important question, and it's a very basic question, and one that does need to be asked, especially for people who maybe have kind of heard about it and not quite sure, and what have you. So, in fact, I had written up handout materials, part of which has a section that says what Kwanzaa is, and then another one that says what Kwanzaa is not.
Interesting.
Because I remember when Dr. Maulana Ron Karenga, who had been professor at the University of Berkeley, California for many years, when he first created the Kwanzaa celebration in 1966, I believe it was, there were people who started referring to it as a Black Christmas. It's like, oh yeah, that's that Black Christmas, right? And that's one of the things that it's not.
Okay.
It's not a Black Christmas. In fact, it has nothing to do with Christmas. However, many people who celebrate Kwanzaa also celebrate Christmas as well. And the dates for the celebration of the holiday were very intentionally and strategically selected because it was known that many people already would have the Christmas holidays off from work. And employers, especially in the 60s, were not going to be looking at, especially with any great sense of priority, to giving Black folks time off from work to celebrate, their own holidays. And so rather than to compete with Christmas, being on December 25th, he started Kwanzaa on December 26th, the next day. So people could still do Christmas Eve and midnight mass if they wanted to. They could do the tree and everything on Christmas Day. And then the next day would begin the first day of Kwanzaa. And the first day of Kwanzaa, December 26th, is basically set aside, especially for the children. So again, you have this very nice segue between Christmas, where children will have just received some gifts. And then on Kwanzaa, they turn around on the first day, right, the very next day after Christmas, they turn around and get some more.
Wow, okay.
And so is that even though there are certain basic elements of the Kwanzaa celebration, for example, there are 7 basic ritual objects for the 7 days and the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. However, the way people put all of that together is left open somewhat to their own interpretation and their own spirit flow and their own preferences. So the 7 basic principles, those are not going to change. Those are staples. Those are solid. The 7 basic ritual objects, those are solid. Although people can add other objects on their Kwanzaa table if they want to. The 7 days, those are solid. But there are other things around that celebration in terms of how people would like to do that, that is really left up to the families. And so essentially Kwanzaa, and it's not an African quote unquote holiday. It is based on, it's inspired by the African Feast of the Harvest. And so because traditionally, and especially before the European conquest, people were able to feed themselves. They had their own land, they planted their own food, they were able to be self-sustaining. And then when the European conquest came over and took over the land and what have you, then all of that shifted. The economy shifted, the sense of self-sufficiency shifted. When there were rituals that were illegalized in their own countries, that shifted it shifted part of the foundation upon which those cultures were built, and that created for a more shaky foundation that continues to manifest itself today
Right.
and has grown in its impact. And so it's based upon the African Feast of the Harvest. The word Kwanzaa, a Kiswahili term spelled from the Kiswahili term is spelled Kwanza, and it means first fruits.
Mhm.
Dr. Maulana Karenga added the second A to the end of the word for the African American holiday celebration to distinguish it to distinguish it from the African spelling and the African terminology, to also have it match up with 7 days. It's also has 7 letters
Oh,
in it,
wow.
and so it is for us also the feast of first fruits, in that it's a harvest celebration for us as well. It's a time for us to come together to talk about the things that we attempted to achieve over the year, and which falls in line with New Year's Eve, so, but the focus is not going out and getting, drinking and carrying on and ballying, but the focus is on families coming together to look at, okay, so these were some of the things that we tried to do over the year. How well did we do? What can we do differently? What did we achieve? Where did we fall a little bit short? What can we do better next year? And how can I help to support you in your efforts to reach your goal? And here are some ways that I would appreciate it if you would help to support me to reach mine. And so it's all about improving the quality of life for our people.
How beautiful.
So it's like a reflection, and we'll do better. We can
It's
do
a
more.
reflection, we'll do better. It's a period of Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
It's also a period of Thanksgiving for the harvest that we have had.
Mhm.
So it is similar. It is like a harvest celebration, which is the reason why we have on the Kwanzaa table the mazao, or the fruits and vegetables, to represent the harvest. And so the fruits and vegetables represent the fruits of our labor.
Mhm.
And so it's a time to express gratitude, where even though we may have fallen short someplace, we did achieve something. We were able to do something that we can feel grateful for.
Now, just backing up a little bit. So, if Kwanzaa is not an African holiday, and started by Dr. I know him as Ron Karenga, um,
Hmm.
so is it African American, or is it really an African diasporic kind of tradition? What is it? Really, it's an African American focus, but it has spread around the world.
Basically, that's correct. It was African American focus. It has spread around the world. And just going back for a second about his name, yes, he is Ron Karenga. The term Maulana means teacher in Kiswahili.
Oh,
Mhm.
And so it's like calling him professor. It's
Yeah.
like saying Professor Ron Karenga.
Mhm.
So he's given a title of respect. And so instead of us just calling him by his first name, we give him that title of respect. So Maulana Ron Karenga. And I'm saying, and I should mention, I'm saying Kiswahili instead of Swahili, which a lot of people don't understand the distinction of. What I learned when I was in college, I took a Kiswahili course. That was like 1973 or something like that. That was my first African language that I began to study. And I was taught by a woman from Kenya. And she taught us that the terms Swahili actually refers to the people who speak the language more correctly referred to as Kiswahili. The
Mm.
prefix ki, means of. So
Mm.
Kiswahili is the language of the Swahili people.
Mhm.
great. Oh, that's so good to know. Okay. Oh, the Swahili people. Okay.
Yeah, and so what has happened, going back to your question about the global impact and spread of Kwanzaa, is that over the years, Well, I became acquainted with Pan-Africanism in the 60s, in the late 60s, especially, and shortly before I went to college, and then got deeper and deeper into it. And then as a result of connecting with some of our socio-political organizations here in Chicago and beyond, and through meeting more people from throughout the African diaspora, I easily became a Pan-Africanist in that, and by definition, I'm referring to the ideology that recognizes that there are children of African descent who, especially as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, they were scattered to many places around the world, so that we ended up in places like Cuba and Puerto Rico and Brazil and Mississippi, Chicago, and Detroit, so in Haiti and so many places. And so we are everywhere. And so we have our own African diaspora. And so there has been, from among all these people, there have always been factions in all of these places who wanted us to come together, who knew that there was such great potential in the power that we could effect in our local areas and also globally, if we could just come together. And and even there was serious conversation in members of the ANC, the African National Congress, and there were people who promoted the learning of one African language that we could all use that could bring us together. So Sheikh Anta Diop was one who promoted the use. Everybody learned Kiswahili, and Kiswahili was chosen because it was spoken in so many areas of Africa. Because people could always come up and say, well, why not Yoruba, or why not Tree, or why not Amharic, what have you. But it was logically selected because of the huge number of people. There are a lot of Swahili speaking people, there are a lot of Swahili people who speak that language. And so they said, well, let's just pick one that a lot of people are already using, because it's our languages, the disparity in our languages is one of the basic features that keep us apart. Mm-hmm. You can be walking down the street by somebody from Puerto Rico, and looking at them, you may get a nice warm sense of connection because you see yourself reflected in them. But then when they open their mouths and start speaking Spanish, then all of a sudden you see a wall. Mm-hmm. Like, well, you ain't my brother. Well, yeah, he is. He's just speaking Spanish, that's all. Learn a little bit of Spanish. Help him learn a little bit of English. Y'all talk. That's your brother.
Well, but I think they didn't use a colonial language, because well, maybe English. Well, that's the language of the colonizer.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so and that's why they didn't want to use a language, a European language, to help bring African people together. And but the logic now in learning at least some of the European languages is that most of us were forced to abandon our own mother tongues and to speak one of them. And so if you have a lot of Spanish speaking people in your community, it just makes good sense if you want to communicate with them. They don't know Swahili. They're not going to be speaking Kiswahili, and you don't know Kiswahili. So, but you work with what you got,
right,
for the purpose of coming together. And then we can learn more African-rooted things in the spirit of Sankofa, from the symbol of Ghana. We can go back and fetch what we left behind. And this is part of what Kwanzaa does. It gives us basic principles that remind us that there's some really basic foundational principles and ideologies that we need to go back and get a hold of again, and practice them on a daily basis and pass them on to our children and future generations.
Yeah, well, Mama Edie, I want to, yeah, to look at some of these next things. Maybe look at some of these seven objects and the 7 days, seven principles. But since you mentioned Pan Africanism, I kind of want to start with the Pan Africanist colors because a lot of people don't realize that these have meaning. And then I see that there's sometimes a conflict. People say, oh, yeah, I know what that is. That means, this, the green is this, but then it's not. So maybe you can explain some of the colors to us, just as a beginning.
Well, okay. Well, among many countries, um, we may refer to them as liberation colors, and the red, black, and green, which are definitely the colors that Dr. Karenga wanted to use for Kwanzaa, and so the red is for the blood that has been shed, the blood that is present, that is still vital within our people. So looking at it from both perspectives, not only the spilling of blood, but the fact that we still got good, strong red blood, we still have life, despite everything that we've gone through, we're still here. And so that blood is strong. That blood is strong. So that's significant. So, and then the black, of course, refers to the Black people. And the green can represent several things. The green represents the land of Africa, and it also represents life, and it represents hope.
Would you say it also represents, by hope, the future, like our future generations?
Absolutely. Yeah, hope for whatever we need to hope for. So, and we definitely need to have hope for our future generations. Even more than having hope for our future generations, we need for more people to participate in helping to shift mindsets of current adult populations and future generations, the younger people, the ideologies and what have you that many of them have lapsed into actually undermine any efforts for us to move forward. I just shared with someone recently that in thinking about reparations, the movement for reparations, if we were to get all the land that we could possibly ask for, that we could call our own, if we could get all the money that we thought that our accounts could hold, even if we got laws to change so that they were more equitable, my own feeling is that until we do the kind of internal repair work that needs to be done, that helps us to see ourselves differently, that helps us to see ourselves as strong and worthy and beautiful and competent. And until we can see that light in others, and until we can also begin to rebuild the trust bond that was so severely damaged during the time of slavery, then all the money, all the land, and what have you is not going to make any difference, because decisions will be made by leaders and followers that have nothing to do with aspiring towards achieving the greatest good for our people.
So we have kind of like internal reparations we need to do ourselves.
Yes, absolutely.
And they're the external reparations.
Absolutely. Yeah. We need it all. And so I started a group in 2006 called Artists for Reparations. And there's a brother here who passed away within the past few years, Dr. Conrad Worrell, spelled Worrill. And he was the director at Northeastern Illinois University Center for Inner City Studies, Jacob Carruthers Center for Inner City Studies, for many years. And Brother Conrad was a very vocal proponent of the reparations movement. And so when I started the Artists for Reparations movement, he was so happy But I told him, I said, well, Brother Conrad, I need you to understand, I'm not trying to gather artists together to go out and, tell the government that they need to give us money.
Mhm.
I'm just not doing that. I said, I think that we've got our own work to do. We got repair work to do
Mhm.
within ourselves as individuals, because we are truly, many of us are walking wounded. And many of us don't even know that we're walking wounded. We go around thinking that because we have trappings of success, whether it be a flashy car or a lovely gold watch or, all the latest technology, or we see ourselves all over Facebook or, that kind of thing. If we think that's success,
Mhm.
we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
in trouble. And until that mind shift changes, that mindset shifts, then we're in trouble. So
Does Kwanzaa kind of help us with this? Because some people, I've talked to have rejected Kwanzaa because they said, well, wait a minute, this is a conflict with the Christianity, and I'm a Christian. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do this Kwanzaa stuff.
absolutely, absolutely. And yes, and I have gotten that over the years when I've done Kwanzaa presentations, which is the reason why I came up with the list. It's a bulleted list of what Kwanzaa is and what Kwanzaa is not. And one of the items that's listed on there is that it's not anti-Christian.
Mm.
There are many Christians who celebrate Kwanzaa. And it's the lack of knowledge. What they say, we suffer for the lack of knowledge, right? That people just don't understand. And so in Christianity, you have the 10 Commandments.
Mhm.
Great. That doesn't mean that your life has to be limited to the focus on the 10 Commandments, that you can't consider or embrace any other thought or ideology that might serve you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And now, if that's what people, if they want to limit their scope that way, certainly that's their prerogative to do so. But the principles of Kwanzaa are, the first one is umoja, for unity.
Yeah,
Is
great.
that anti-Christian?
Doesn't sound like it to me. No.
You want me to go through the principles now? I think this would be a good point.
Good idea.
Yes.
Please.
Kujichagulia, the second one, for self-determination,
Kuchagulia.
to name ourselves, to define ourselves, and to determine for ourselves what our lives are going to be about. Is that anti-Christian?
No.
The third principle is ujima, for collective work and responsibility. Okay, hopefully folk won't have trouble with that. Uh, because we know that when we share the load, it makes the load much lighter for everybody, which
Mhm.
reminds me of that first Kwanzaa celebration that I want to speak to,
Oh,
that I
yeah.
want to make a point of that. But the fourth one is ujamaa, and I say ujamaa. Some people look at it and say ujama. First of all, first of all, English is just about the only language on the planet where the A sound for many people practically always says A or A.
Yeah, right.
For most languages, the A sound pretty uniformly says ah.
Okay.
Okay, so ujama, not ujama, ujama. And I'm saying ah because in Kiswahili, well, the word ujamaa is spelled Ujamaa. So in Kiswahili, each vowel gets its own pulse.
Oh.
So with the two A's being at the end of the word, then we're saying ujamaa, ujamaa. Okay, not ujama, ujamaa. And that one is for cooperative economics.
Yes.
And so for us to recognize that we need to support our own communities. in order for them to grow. And it was what happened. A lot of people, when they think about Black Wall Street, and they think automatically about the bombings in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And but many people are unaware that there were many Black Wall Streets around this country.
It's true.
There were many communities where Black folk, and it was after, partly due to the fact that if they would go into town and they would try to walk into shops, if they wanted to buy a hat, they couldn't try it on. They had to just buy it, and if it didn't fit or they didn't like the way it looked after all, if they came back to get a refund, oftentimes they would not get a refund. If they wanted to buy a pair of shoes, they couldn't try them on. White folks could try them on.
Wrong shoe size for a long time.
Okay. Yeah, I'm telling you, so they weren't allowed into the schools. So they started their own schools. They weren't allowed into the churches. They were forced into Christianity because their own cultural traditions were taken away from them. So if they happened to be around Methodists who didn't allow them to come in the church, or either didn't allow them to praise more as fully as the white folks did, so they started African Methodist Episcopal. You see what I'm saying? And so, so they took what they were genius enough, intelligent enough to take what they had, to name it in the spirit of Kujichagulia, self-determination, to name it African Methodist Episcopal, and make it their own, and to be in charge of it. And so then it was when the white folks in the community saw that they were actually becoming more economically successful than they, who had kept them out of their stores and out of their shops and followed them around like they were criminals if they were inside, didn't allow them into the schools, didn't allow them into the churches. Now all of a sudden they're upset because they did become self-sufficient, and now they're doing better than they. So they decided to burn the place down, and that's just out of jealousy. That's what happened, and it happened in many places, not just Tulsa. It happened in many places between 1919 and 1921, 1922. There were many communities, wealthy Black communities, that were destroyed by, envious white folks. And that was a shame. So the fifth principle of Kwanzaa is Nia, for purpose. I was talking to some children last weekend, asking them, so what do you think your purpose is in life? They're from say 9 through 13 years old. And they had a hard time coming up with an idea of what their purpose is. And I said, so what, you think that you're just here to live and breathe and eat and go to sleep and go to school and, play with your iPods and what have you? Or do you think there's something more? What purpose can you serve? What can you do? What can you be for your family? Start there. Start at home. What purpose can you serve in your house? Can you just, when your mom comes in from work, does it ever occur to you to offer to bring her slippers? Does it ever occur to you to offer to run out to the car and get the groceries? Does it occur to you to offer to help her to cook the food, to clean your room without her having to ask? Can you be a blessing to your mom in your home? Can you be brave enough to try to break up a fight among, an argument at school? If you're, as you get older, will you take on the civic responsibility of making sure that your voice is heard? Will you vote? And I know there are a lot of people who lost faith in the vote, but it's one of the few tools that we have.
Right.
So you got to use what you got. Use what you got until it gets better. Use what you got until it gets better. So we got purpose as the fifth one. The sixth principle of Kwanzaa is Kuumba, for creativity. And there are many ways that we can be creative. We not only Sing and dance. A lot of people think about Black folks singing and dancing. Yeah, we sing and dance, but we also write books.
Yep.
We
Right.
write plays. We design architectural structures.
Right.
Benjamin Banneker designed the city of Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
We are creative when it comes to problem solving. So we have created many of our own independent institutions. My daughter was raised in our own independent Black school, which was called New Concept Development Center,
Mm-hmm.
under Hakeem Madhubuti and Safisha Madhubuti's Institute of Positive Education, which
Mm-hmm.
also was the umbrella organization for Third World Press Publishing Company and African American Bookstore. And over the years, we've evolved to also developing for older children Betty Shabazz International Charter School and
Mm-hmm.
Barbara Sizemore Elementary School. And
Wow.
so we have our own institutions. That's creativity at work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's creativity at work in ways that make an impact on everyday life and that affect the future lives of our children and of our people. And
Mm-hmm.
teaching them that we are part of a global world,
Uh-huh.
and teaching them that we have cousins all over the world, teaching them that Pan-Africanist ideology, that when we come together to lift each other up, there are no limits to what we can be achieved. And if we hold on to the seventh principle of Kwanzaa, which is Imani for faith, then through faith, all things can be achieved.
Oh.
That's one of my favorites, Imani, faith, because it just means that I mean, that brings that inner part that we were talking about, the repairing the inside. When you have faith,
Mm-hmm.
the you things can happen. You can just achieve, and you can you can impart hope to other people, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and institutions, and you can come up with things. Your creativity comes out, and all of that, with faith. So
Absolutely. And
that's
without faith, you don't even try, right?
you don't even try. Yeah, right.
Right.
Because then you
You're
say,
not,
well,
you're
I
not
can't do that.
motivated.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And that's one of the
exactly.
unfortunate things that's happened with a lot of our young people. They've given up. Many of them have given up. Gratefully, many of them are still doing wonderful things,
Hmm.
but
Yes.
many of them have given up. They don't really feel like they have the support that they need. They don't feel heard. They
Mm-hmm.
don't feel visible. And I think that's one of the reasons why they feel like they need to put all their personal business on Facebook, and why they're jumping on these TV shows and airing all their dirty laundry,
Hmm.
just so they can be seen. Come on.
Hmm.
So I mean, let's see our children for who they are, and let's help to nurture them. Let's help them to see the light that they have inside of them so that they can do something meaningful with their lives.
Right. Right. Well, Mel, I remember about what is it? It is Kumba. You were talking with Hans about that at the lawyer circle. We were talking about starting a business, and how you look around and everything that you've seen here was somebody's idea in their mind first before it actually came into the world, into being. I thought, yeah, that's creativity in action.
That's creativity. Yeah. Well, and a lot of that, was Black people, Black African Americans, Black, people came up with these things. Some of them a lot of them we don't get credit for, but a lot were our own ideas. Anything that you look at was somebody's idea at some point in time. Could have been, my idea or somebody else's idea, but we have to look at it like we have that creativity in us, and we can come up with things. We can do things. We can become whatever we want to become.
Absolutely. There was a conversation I had with a gentleman who happened to be a white guy, very nice man, but clearly limited in his interactions with Black folks. I think he's got good intentions and a good heart. He just doesn't know. And so I've appreciated the opportunity to have conversations with him. And he was remarking on some musician. I don't know if it was Stevie Wonder. There was some musician, a Black musician, who didn't, and I don't even know if he was necessarily blind, but he said wow, can you imagine? He said, I just love his music. And just to think that he can't even read music and he's created all these wonderful songs. And I said, he said, I don't know. How does that happen? I said, you know, now think back to when music first came into the world. Do you think there were people who had sheets with little black dots running across there to show them how the music was supposed to go?
Right.
I said, those little black dots don't mean anything for me either. I mean, eventually I had to start learning when I started playing violin. But when I started playing piano, I went to my piano and I could hear the music in my head. And I would start matching up the keys to what I heard in my head. And I had music, it had nothing to do with little black dots. And so I was telling him, I said, you know, music is inspiration that comes from the soul. The source of music is that it's somebody's spirit song. It's somebody's spirit song. And folks who want to imitate it or emulate it or reproduce it or whatever, they need to find a way to capture it if they can't do it up here, if they can't retain it up here. So they came up with a coding system that would help them to know how to reproduce it. But it didn't start there. It started from the spirit song.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if that's kind of more of a Eurocentric way of looking at music.
Very
And
Western way of looking at music. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think so too, because also it's graded like, you know, if you can read music, you're better than a person who can't read music, you know.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. So we need to get out of that too.
well, you have to ask. So we've gone through the principles. Are are we supposed to kind of consider them all as being equal, or is like umoja, since it's first, is that one the most important, or are they really kind of equal, and you think of it that way?
I think it's a very personal thing. I think it's a very personal thing. And I think that the way that one weighs the value of each of those principles could very well have to do with where they happen to be in their lives at that moment. If they just came through a very, very rough time, but they refused to give up, they determined that they were going to hold on, then that principle of Vimani was probably prominent in their lives to help them get through that at that time. If there's somebody who if the pandemic wiped out their business, but their previous clients and patrons or the neighbors or family members came together and said, look, we're going to do a fundraiser for you. We're going to get you back up on your feet. Then at that point in time, in that person's life, it's probably Ujamaa for cooperative economics. You see what I'm saying? So that, and I think that can also be, which one is, better or more important and what have you. That when we move away from that Eurocentric westernized thinking about, valuing things that way, when we look at things in a more circular fashion than in a linear fashion, if we look at things in a sense of looking for a sense of balance, then we can see that we don't have to worry about which one is more important or, which one should you focus on first or any of that. Just know them all and consider what role they can play in your life. And you had mentioned earlier on the application of the principles of Kwanzaa in your everyday life. We can apply all of those principles every day, in this day, for all three of us who are on this call right now. There's one principle that we're practicing right now. Which one would it be?
Candy.
Did you jot them down? Say again?
Umoja.
Moja.
Absolutamente. Umoja. We're together, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're doing something together that is hopefully purposeful and will have meaning for your listeners, right?
Yes.
So we're practicing the first principle of Umoja right now. And how about Kujichagulia, self-determination?
Right.
Didn't
I
you
think
all
that's
decide
fair.
what you wanted to talk about today?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Hello. And and we took on the responsibility to manifest it. That's self-determination, Ashe. And the third principle, Ujima, for collective work and responsibility. Each one of us is playing a part in helping to make this show happen. Okay, Sister Robin's not doing it all by herself. Sister Mel's not doing it all by herself. I'm not doing it all by myself. We're doing it together.
We're good together.
Ujima, in the spirit of collective work and responsibility, even for Ujamaa, for cooperative economics. It is a way that can potentially um, be a monetizing experience for all of us,
All of us.
depending upon how we want it to manifest. Yes.
Yes.
And then for Nia, for purpose, each of us is manifesting our part of our purpose right here by participating in this show, right? So our purpose right now is to reach out to each other, reach out to others, to share this information. That's our purpose for today. And for Kurumba, the ideas that you came up with or what we're going to approach and what we're going to talk about,
Right.
that's the creativity that's happening there. And the Imani, we have faith that it was going to happen.
That's fantastic.
So it is.
Well, one of the reasons I really like Amani and faith is I think it connects, with our ancestors. It connects us with something greater than ourselves. It gives us that, we know something, in us is important, and our cultural background is, leading and guiding us. If we would just listen, to
Ashe. And I'm very happy that you mentioned that too, because one of the things that we do during Kwanzaa, besides setting up all the ritual objects and just moving quickly through the Kanara, and I can mention them if we have go through them if we have a little bit more time. But what I wanted to say here is that when we celebrate Kwanzaa during the Karamu or the feast, or the celebration, the Kwanzaa Karamu, then we pour libation. We first of all, we call on the Great Spirit, known by many names. Some may call him God, some may call Olodumare, some may call, so, but that Great Spirit that created life, we will give honor, to that Great Spirit. So we say that Kwanzaa is not a religious celebration, but it's a cultural celebration. So some people may not call on God. They may go straight to the ancestors. So again, it kind of depends upon how you want to do things to some extent. But most people, I would say, do believe in a supreme being who celebrate Kwanzaa. And so we start out by honoring that Great Spirit, and then we go to the ancestors so that we can acknowledge. I mean, had it not been for the ancestors and our understanding of how they did live, then we may not have come to the realization that a celebration like Kwanzaa could have importance for us.
Right.
Yes.
It's because we learned of some of the traditions that our ancestors had that we can move forward and carry forth even a different facsimile of those traditions. It helps us to be connected to the basic essence of what those traditions were about.
Wow.
Well, I think that's true, and I think that at some point we got away from that. We moved away from that, and to be whole, we really have to move toward it.
Absolutely, and even the and that had to do with the breakdown too as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. I mean, it destroyed so much of the foundation of the cultures upon which people built their lives, They were told that they could not practice their spiritualities anymore, that they had to accept Christianity or Catholicism or whatever it happened to be. But they were clever enough when the Spanish, for example, told them that they couldn't, use their statues of their deities, figures of Shango or Yemonja, the goddess of the ocean, or Oshun, that you can't use those anymore. You got to use our statues. So they were like, "Well, what's up with that? You got statues, we got statues. How come we can't use our own statues?" And so they came up with a form of spirituality that many of them, especially in Spanish-speaking countries, call Santeria, which means the way of the saints. And so they would take like the colors for Yemonja, the goddess of the ocean, are blue and white. Well, we know in Christianity, who wears blue and white? Mary, right?
Yeah,
Mary,
right.
the mother of Jesus, wears blue. So Yemonja is mother goddess. Mary is honored as the great mother. And so they say, okay, well, Mary, come on. We can't use Yemonja, so come on, you be here. You're going to be our Yemonja. And that's what they did. They took the Catholic saints and the counterparts that they had in West African traditional spirituality. They said, okay, we'll put these up on the altar. The Spanish people won't get mad at us. They won't beat us and kill us and all that kind of thing because we're not doing what they told us to do. But we know that we're honoring our own entities, our own spirits. And so they called it Santeria, the way of the saints. And in Brazil, it's the same thing, only it goes by the name of Candomblé, So and in Haiti, it goes oftentimes by the name of Vodun, what some people call voodoo, but it goes by Haitian Vodun. So these West African traditions they continued to manifest themselves wherever the people had been scattered around the world, and they held on to those. But for people to be beaten and killed because they were fulfilling their own cultural manifestations, their own the dynamics and what have you of their own cultures is a terrible thing. For people to be punished for speaking their own language to the point of being whipped or having their tongues cut out, is a terrible thing to have to endure. And the rites of passage ceremonies, the rites of passage trainings for young men and young women were the times when young men and young women were specifically taught, this is what is expected of you as you are becoming an adult. And by the end of this training, young brothers, you're going to know something about how to build your own house so that you can house yourself, your wife, and your children. You're going to know something about farming so that you can raise your own food. You're going to know something about goat herding or, those kind. You're going to know how to build weapons so that you can protect your people. You're going to know all those things because we're going to teach you. Well, when the colonizers, when the invaders, colonizers is much too kind a word. When the invaders came in and took over, they disbanded all of that. And they said, y'all can't do that anymore. And once when I went to Ghana, there was a village. I don't know if I shared this out with you all before or not. But once I was in a village where they had not had a rites of passage training since the time of the arrival of the colonizers.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
They decided in the spirit of Sankofa that they were going to go back and fetch what they left behind. They saw that the young people were becoming wayward. They were becoming too westernized, too influenced by stuff that they were starting to see on TV and all that kind of thing. And they had lost their way. They didn't know what it means to be a responsible adult. And so they decided that they were going to start up the rites of passage trainings again. So the time that I was there was one young lady who they had selected to go through training. and she was about 16, I think, something like that. But they were going to have this wonderful celebration. This was the culmination, of her training. And it was funny and kind of sad at the same time that it had been so long since they did it. They knew basically what was kind of sort of supposed to happen. But even though they were speaking in Tree, we couldn't understand what they were saying, but yet we could. And they were like, no, it's not supposed to go like that. Okay, now, yes, it is. No, we need to do this. We need to do that. And so they were arguing about what was supposed to happen because they couldn't remember. Mm-hmm. So it was funny in a way, but then it was sad that they couldn't remember because they had been cut off from that. But the important thing was that they recognized the importance of renewing that tradition so that they could teach their young people what it means to be an adult in this village and in the world, what it means to be responsible and to take care of yourself and your family. So that was a good thing.
So Kwanzaa is a way to go back through those principles every year so that, we don't lose connection with what's really important.
Ashe. And the principles are referred to in Kiswahili as the Nguzo Saba, spelled Nguzo, two separate words, Nguzo, N as in Nancy, Guzo, and then the second word, Saba, S as in Sam, ABA. So it basically means 7 principles. Saba is the number 7 in Kiswahili. Mm-hmm. Nguzo is principles, or rules. And so the Nguzo Saba, I encourage people, as you were saying earlier on, Sister Robin, to consciously practice the Nguzo Saba every day. Don't wait until December 26th before you start thinking about the 7 principles again. They need to be applied in everyday life. And we just saw a wonderful example how we're practicing all 7 of them, just sitting right here on this program today.
Right. Sure did. And then what is it? You mentioned Kinara, some of the terms I don't know. So
Right. The 7 basic ritual objects of the Kwanzaa Karamu, of the table that you set up. The Kinara, spelled Kinara. Kin is in Nancy, Ara. Kinara is the candle holder. Oh. And so I remember early on, as many things as possible are made from natural items. And so my very first Kwanzaa Kinara that I got in, I guess, probably like 1973 was actually the branch of a tree.
Oh my God.
I have it here. We were going to be doing video and everything, but I have it right over there on the table. But it's a branch of a tree that a brother had drilled holes in, and he shellacked it. So it had a little bit of a gleam to it, And I loved it so much because of its naturalness, So many of the Kinaras, most of the Kinaras are made of wood, but they're straight and, all perfectly shaped and all of that. And I loved this one because it was just so natural. Even had one little branch sticking off on the end, so it wasn't just one log. So there's 7 holes for each of the 7 principles. The candles are in accordance with the liberation colors, red, black, and green. 3 red, 3 green, 1 black is placed in the center. Then the black one is generally lit first on the 26th for the children. And so so we've gone through the principles, and so each one of the candles represents one of the principles. Okay, so we have the Kinara, and the candles are called Mishuma Saba, Mishumaa, Mishuma Saba, Saba. But if you're talking about one candle, it's Mshuma Saba. It's Mshuma. And the plural, though, is Mishuma, like key for Kiswahili, okay? So the candles, the Mishuma Saba, And then we have the fruits and vegetables, which are called masao, spelled Mazao, masao.
Okay.
And again, the vegetables and the fruits, the masao represent the fruits of our labor. Um, and we have the kikombe chao moja, or the kikombe. Kikombe is spelled Kikom, as in Mary, B as in boy, E, Kikombe, Kikombe. Kikombe, second word is cha, Cha,
CJ.
Cha, umoja, U-M as in Mary, O-J-A, Kikombe cha umoja. So the Kikombe is the unity cup. So we already know umoja for unity, yeah? And
Mhm.
so the Kikombe is the cup. So
Okay.
the
Okay.
so kikombe cha umoja, so cup for unity.
You
And
only have one
so
of those?
I'm sorry.
You only use one of those?
Yeah, you only need one. You
Okay.
only need one. And what happens is that well, years ago, especially among family members, you could
Mhm.
take that cup and you pour some juice or water or whatever you have in there, and then you pass it around to different family members. And years ago, when we first started out, you'd actually take a sip, and what have you. But now is, things have shifted and what have you. So symbolically, we can pass the cup around and people will, take a sip. So it symbolically says that whatever it is that I have, I'm
Mhm.
going to be willing to share with you. This way we will all have something. And this would probably be um, well, I'll come back to it. I was going to say it'd be a good segue for me to go into that very special first Kwanzaa that I can do very quickly, believe it or not.
Very interested in hearing about that. Okay. Okay.
But we'll come back to it. So the Kikombe Cha Umoja. So we've got the Kanara, the Mishuma Saba, and did I say Mishuma Saba or Mushu? Yeah, I said Mishuma, right? Am I?
You said
Yeah,
MI?
okay, good. Okay.
Mhm.
So we got the Kanara, the Mishuma Saba, the Masao, the Kikombe Cha Umoja. We have gifts or zawadi, spells Zawad, as in David, I. Zawadi, the gifts. It is encouraged that people make their own gifts rather than run into the department store to buy them.
Mhm.
Because for one thing, it's a reflection of our what when we make stuff ourselves
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
of our
Creativity. Yeah.
there you go.
Creativity.
There you go. It's a reflection of our creativity, and it's also in support of the fourth principle of Kwanzaa, which is cooperative economics.
Yes.
Mhm.
If you're not giving your money, to somebody outside your community, then you can use it for your family. Or if you are
Right.
going to buy a gift for Kwanzaa or for anything else, for that matter, you will shop among your own people. That helps to support the cooperative economics, that helps to support the economic foundation of the community.
Yes.
And
Great.
so we have that. And then we have what else am I missing? Oh, let's see, we did the gifts. There's one more. We did the kanara, the candles, the kikombe, the masao, um,
Is it the table?
the
Corn.
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 Yeah,
Corn.
yeah.
Yeah.
You need the table to set it on, but we don't
Oh,
really have a particular term for the table.
okay.
But the corn, there are a couple of terms for the corn. One is muhindi, spelled M as in Michael, Uhin as in Nancy, D as in David, I, muhindi, Muhindi, muhindi. Um, and or it can also be referred to as the muhindi, or yeah, I'm blanking on it right now.
Okay.
But anyway, but muhindi is the term that, and I usually use the other term. Isn't that interesting? I wanted to try so hard to remember this one. I forgot the other one. But muhindi is a common term for it. And so the corn really, really special, because the corn represents the children and represents the future generations. And so there needs to be at least one ear of corn on the table for each child who lives in a household, for
Okay.
each child in the household. And so if you only have one child, you only have one ear of corn is sufficient, and so forth. However, if there's a household that has no children, they still need to have at least one ear of corn.
Okay.
Because even though they may not have brought forth children into the world, because they live, in some form or another, they give life to someone else. We
Yes.
give love, yes. We give support, yes. We give advice. We give hugs. In one way or another, all of us brings forth new life. We all give the gift of life. And the corn specifically was selected because you can take one kernel of corn and plant it, and you get a corn plant, right? And from that one corn plant, you can keep plucking little kernels and plant that till you end up with a whole field of corn. It began with just one. And
Amazing.
so symbolically, it reminds us of just how special each of us happens to be as individuals.
Oh,
We plant our seeds wherever we can. It's not our responsibility to control or determine what happens with that seed. Our responsibility is to plant it, water it when we can, nurture it when we can, and help it to grow. But plant the seed. And don't be worried about, well, you didn't do what I told you. Didn't I tell you that what you need to do? You don't have to go there. Well, we don't even need to go there. It's like, look, I told you now. If that's what you want to do, okay. But I ain't told you. Don't come back telling me I didn't tell you now, because I ain't told you. So, so yeah, that's the significance of the corn.
very, very significant.
I share. Oh, and so I can go back if I may with
Yes.
the my very first Kwanzaa celebration.
Oh, great.
I had decided when I met Haki, when we had him at Northern Illinois University where I went, where we had our Black study with our what was it? It was in February, our Black History Week. We only had a week at that time. And so we had him come in as the keynote speaker. I had already begun reading his books, and I was inspired. I told Haki that, we didn't really curse in my household. And sometimes when I'd read some of his, and I'm raised Roman Catholic, and when I would read some of his information, I'm like, oh, my word. I told Haki, I said, brother, you shocked me into consciousness. Because I would read some of his things. I was like, wow, that was some pretty strong stuff. I mean, he wasn't like, it wasn't horrible or anything. It was like just a word here, a word there, something. But it did shock me into consciousness because I wasn't accustomed to it. But it really, really made me pay attention. It got my attention. And I heard what he was saying. And everything that I read that he was saying was true. And I embraced it. And so when he came and he spoke about the Institute of Positive Education and Third World Press, I was like, oh my goodness, when I graduate, I got to go there. And so I did. This was how I was introduced to Kwanzaa. And so that year in Chicago, I attended my very first gathering at a place that we used to call the packing house, the old packing house. And the stockyards were not really that far away from where this location was. And but they started over the years using the packing house for balls and special celebrations. Well, this particular year, the packing house wasn't as well cared for as it was, but we were able to get it cheap, or for free or something, And that year, the packing house had no heat.
Oh, no.
But everybody,
Freezing.
oh my goodness, everybody, but it was a time when you would gather for Kwanzaa, you would come and you can bring your own chairs. You could bring your blanket, sit down on the floor. Everybody brought a dish.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they said, well, how much is it to get in? You don't have to pay nothing. Just bring a bowl of rice, bring a pot of greens, bring some
Mm.
cornbread, bring a
Mm.
bottle of juice. If everybody would bring just one thing, something enough to share with a few people, then everybody would have plenty. Man, there was a stage area where I think it was a stage, there was food spread out as far as you could see, and the presentations were going on, and people were sitting up there shivering in their coats, and because there was no heat, and we had little candles flickering here and there. So, but nobody cared. We were happy because we were celebrating us.
That's right.
We were together, and it has taken a lot for Black people to see ourselves as being worthy of celebration.
Mm.
And so when people say about Kwanzaa that they don't need it, that it don't mean nothing, that it's against their religion, it makes me sad because I don't know how many times they have opportunities to say to themselves, I am worthy of celebration
Oh,
and
celebration.
you are worthy of celebration. We're going to celebrate each other together.
Together. Mm.
And in this spirit of celebration, we're going to remind ourselves of what's important and we're going to rise.
Mm-hmm.
That is, when I think about how people want to reject some certain rituals and that kind of thing, somehow people look down on ritual as being, well, wow, that you're just doing something mindlessly. You don't know why you're doing it, and they're controlling your mind and body and all of that. But I see that there is really a place for ritual in our lives and as individuals, but as you were just describing, as a community, and how everybody just gets uplifted, for
Mhm.
because of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shaking hands is a ritual. I
Mm.
mean, I think a lot of times people think of the word ritual and they think that, we're going to be asking people to come and start sacrificing chickens or something. And I mean, it's not,
Mhm.
I mean, and if you're into that, and if that's part of your ritual, that's fine, but that's not, rituals are not limited to situations that they have learned to be afraid of,
Oh,
that
yeah.
they have not learned about enough to understand even what is that sacrificing the chickens about. It has meaning for the people who sacrifice those chickens.
Mm-hmm.
When Native people, indigenous people in this country, in any of the Americas, when they would traditionally go hunting and they'd have to shoot or kill an animal, they'd pray.
Yeah.
They would apologize to the animal. You know, I'm sorry I had to take your life, but know that the force of your life will help to feed myself and my family. And we will
Mhm.
continue to honor your spirit.
Right.
We'll continue to honor your spirit, through your sacrifice. So, I mean, it's the natural order of things that people that creations consume other creations in order to continue to survive.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply the natural order of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but to do it in a very conscious and spiritual way that honors that life form and that uses it well, that doesn't just like the people shooting elephants and killing the elephants and taking the ivory tusks and leaving the elephant there to just rot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not like that. So indigenous people knew better.
Mhm.
That's a very Western kind of thing. That's
Right.
a very Western thing. So,
Right.
Yeah, and the importance of community. And I think maybe we have gotten away from that. But when I've been
hmm
talking to other people, so to some epidemiologists and psychologists and public health people, they all say that somehow we've gotten away from our community, but we really need that. That's our safe space. It's a place where we can be ourselves. It can be a large community of thousands, or it can
hmm
be a small community of three women like us, speaking like this. But that we need.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a brother, excuse me, by the name of Malidoma Somé, Malidoma Patrice Somé, and I don't know if I might have mentioned him to you or not, because he's from
Burkina Faso. Yes.
Yeah, from Burkina Faso. Did
I'm
I
reading
think I
his
talked?
book.
Hmm? Oh,
I'm
are you
reading his
okay?
book right
Didn't I
now.
talk about him the last time? I think
No,
that when we no,
I don't think so. I'm reading his book
Oh,
right now.
which
And
one?
let's see, the one
Of,
on,
of water in the spirit,
no, the second one on healing, ritual, and community.
ritual, power, healing, and community.
Yes, that's it.
It
Wow.
was, it was so amazing. I was doing workshops for Chicago Public Schools, and they had asked me to come in and do a Kwanzaa celebration, a presentation on Kwanzaa. And so I had my table all set up, had my little candles going and what have you, had my little doll sitting there. And most of the people were already there. Women walked in, um, and shortly before we started, and she looked over to the side and saw my table there, and she saw the candles and the dolls and stuff, and she said, "Oh, no, 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 honey, I can't be dealing with all that old African stuff, you know." And so I was like, "Okay, I got me one here," And so anyway, so she went on to her seat, and the other parents, they were so embarrassed. They like, "Girl, why you come in here like that? That's the guest speaker and blah blah blah." You're like, "Well, I'm just saying." So so anyway, I was like, "All right now." So but to abbreviate that experience, let me say that by the time I got through going through things, when she talked about it was against, that was the first time that I heard somebody say it was against their religion. And so by the time I got through going through the principles like I did with you all, like, is unity against your religion? Is your ability to name yourself and determine for yourself what your life is going to be about against your religion? And after I went through them all, I said, I would suggest that if you find that any of these principles are against your religion, I'd look again at your religion.
right.
Yeah.
And in terms of what is it teaching you? And what is it encouraging you to embrace that would move you away from what is good for you?
Yeah.
And so I used an example of I said, people think about rituals, and I use the chicken example because that's what most people think about when they think about the word ritual. And I went through different things that can be rituals. I said shaking hands is rituals. Seeing somebody first thing in the morning and saying good morning, that's a ritual. So a ritual is simply a repetitive behavior that has become traditionalized.
Yeah.
And so I asked, I said, I said, let me think of an example. And this was the first time I had encountered this. So this came to me, and because I was raised Roman Catholic, I said, is anybody here, raised Catholic? So his brother was there. He said, I was. And I said, okay, let me use this as an example. I said, when your when you would enter the church, and when you were coming inside and dipping your fingers in the holy water to make the sign of the cross, I said, what were you thinking about? He said, well, I was thinking, I sure wish my mama hadn't made me get up this morning, so I had to go to church. I had to laugh, and everything. I was like, yeah, okay, I hear you. And so I said, but let me ask you this. I said, if anybody had ever taught you, and this had never occurred to me, it occurred to me in this moment. I said, if you placed your fingers in that water, if for a moment you would think, God, thank you for the gift of the cooling, refreshing qualities of water. Thank you for the gift of life that water brings. And as you bring your fingers with the holy water to your forehead, you thought for a moment, God, bless my mind so that it can be fixed on you, so that you can guide my way. Bless my heart so that I will know love and compassion and treat others as I would have them treat me. Bless my shoulders so that I can bear whatever burden you place upon me in faith in your name. Do you think that might have made a difference?
Oh, he had to.
Right.
He said, I think it might have made a difference. He said, nobody ever taught me that. I said, nobody ever taught me either. I said, it just came to me just now in sharing this with you all, because that's what makes sense for me. I had begun to look at rituals that I was engaged in and to ask myself, okay, how does this serve a purpose? What am I doing this for? Is it just a habit? And that's what many rituals have become for many people, just a habitual behavior. And so he said, yeah, I think it would have mattered. So we went on, had great conversation. The sister came to me, apologized for the way she came in. She said, that was so interesting. I didn't even know that. And I'm like, well, see, that's what happened. I said, stick with Mama Edie, boy. You
That's right.
Would you believe that a girlfriend of mine, Khadi, wrote to, called us. We didn't have all of that at that time, text messaging and all that. This was many years ago. Like in the 80s or maybe early 90s or something like that. No, it was in the 80s. In fact, it was in the 80s that this happened. And so she said, well, you guys, she said, there's a brother and his wife coming from Burkina Faso, and they're going to be up at the Oasis Center, and I think you all are really going to want to be there. And so Malidoma and Sabonfu were there, and we went up there, peace be upon her. She's made her transition now, and his wife. And so we went up there, but I could not believe it when she sent us the information. And this could not have been more than 2 to 3 weeks after I did that workshop. She sends the information, and the name of the book was Rituals, Power, Healing, and Community. I'm like, I'm through. I'm just through. It's like me deciding I'm going to write this story about my father, and Horace Silver's song comes on.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It's amazing. I love it.
I do too. That book is so powerful.
This is the way spirit works, Ashe. This is the way spirit works. So when we recognize it, then we can be grateful. And then we're grateful, we're more conscious of it. When we're more conscious of it, we can recognize it more when it happens. And then we can feed into it more. And it serves us. And it serves everybody, whose lives we touch.
Right, and nothing mindless.
And we have to be open to that. We have to be open to that. I think we're closed.
Absolutely.
Our rituals keep us closed.
It's true. Yes, it's true. Especially if we don't recognize what they're for in the first place.
Right.
And there are people who are so wedded to their rituals that they don't feel that there are any other rituals that they can embrace. Mm-hmm. But for me, that's a mindset that has been perpetrated by the organizers of those religions. Absolutely. They want to maintain control. Is more money in the basket? Mm-hmm. Your tithes and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Look what happened to the Vatican's got its own city.
Yeah, right. Its own country. You really
from into the diamond mines in South Africa. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The gold mines in South America, where they forced the indigenous people to melt down their golden idols.
Right.
To melt down their own spiritual idols, melt down their own sacred idols, to turn that gold into coins so that they could use it for money in Europe and build the castles and the Vatican and so forth. So such a history, yep.
It sure is. And there's so much more that we can talk about. And but Mama Edie, thank you so much for all of this.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So excited.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We really
Always a
appreciate
pleasure. Always a pleasure.
it.
Yes, and yeah,
Peace and blessings.
yeah, thank you so much. And we are going to actually, I finished my espresso, and I thought about it while I was drinking it too. You know, what's the mindless thing? But yeah, but thank you so much. And
My
you know,
pleasure.
I
My
know
pleasure.
listeners are really going to understand and get something out of Kwanzaa. They just have to, they got to do the work of being open, but it's all
Be
there for
open. Yeah, yeah. Be open. That's the thing. There's just so much available, but you have to be open to it.
And the key to being open is to be not afraid.
that's it.
Fear.
You
Hmm.
don't have to be afraid. Just listen. Be open enough to listen at least. You may not embrace it right away, but at least learn
Mhm.
about what it is that you're objecting to.
Right.
Objecting the part. I don't like that. Well, what do you know about it? Nothing.
Nothing, but I don't like
Okay, but I just don't like it.
I just don't like it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because be not afraid, that is in the Bible.
It's
So,
true.
Hello. There you go.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, ladies, thank you so much. And
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
yeah, and we will meet again soon. Have a great one.
Okay, okay.
All
Peace.
right.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
Hi, it's Robin again. We hope, Mel and I hope, that you enjoyed this wonderful introduction to Kwanzaa. We want to thank Mama Edie for her time and her energy and amazing participation. It's wonderful to have, it's a gift really to have a teacher like Mama Edie who really brings it all to life. Didn't you just love how she took Mel and me through our work at ETT to show how the Espresso Talk Today podcast embodies all of the Kwanzaa principles? It was a really great analysis that made me stand up and cheer. It's made me very thankful. Perhaps you can also do the same with your work or another aspect of your life and see how it embodies the Kwanzaa principles. Finally, again, I hope that you'll join us for the Celebration of Kwanzaa podcast shows. The stories written by DeClark and told by the ETT team are amazing. Great for the whole family, great for you and your partner, great for you and a friend or group of friends, and just great for you. But at ETT, you're never alone. Reach out to us at team@espressotalktoday.com or join us on our Facebook page at Espresso Talk Today podcast page. No one goes it alone. We are a community and we're here for each other and we're here for you. We will continue our regular Friday podcast shows for the remainder of December and then, of course, going into the new year and beyond. These will be reposts for our most popular and lively shows. And we'll see you on the first day of Kwanzaa. From me, Robin, and the rest of the Espresso Talk Today team, thank you, thank you, thank you for another year together. We are going into our third year, and we could not have done it without you. You're important to us, and we're grateful for you. Bye for now.